Civil society group OUTA has consistently called for those implicated in state capture to be removed from their positions of power. They have urged the president to act. Well, that moment for the president to respond to the State Capture Commission of Inquiry's findings and recommendations is tonight, just 2 hours from now. What signals does President Cyril Ramaphosa need to give to demonstrate his seriousness on that voluminous report and make it worth the paper, resources and time that made it possible? OUTA CEO Wayne Duvenage joins us. Wayne, good evening and welcome. How important a milestone is this moment in South Africa's long walk to accountability?
It's very important. You know, a lot of work has gone into the Zondo Commission, the State Capture Commission. It's been a number of years and a big cost, and we cannot allow this document to gather dust, thousands and thousands of pages, a lot of good recommendations. And now it is over to the president to tell us what do we make of this, what does he make of it, and how do we move forward as a country? Because state capture has crippled this country, has set us back and it made us a lot poorer. And there's a lot of good information that comes out of this report. So we want to see action going forward. And tonight's speech or feedback from the president is going to be very important. We'll be watching very closely.
South Africa's been spoiled for choice in terms of some of the signals that, you know, public sector or private public sector civil society organizations are putting forward as measures that the president can announce. They range from beefing up law enforcement institutions to deal with things like state capture or to prevent it from happening again. We've heard the idea of a Chapter 9 institution dealing specifically with corruption also being floated. What are you as OUTA hoping will be announced as measures that allow the recommendations to be real and implemented?
Well, firstly, if we are able to have a Chapter 9 independent institution that really tackles corruption, because we've got years of catching up to do, and corruption still lives on today, very much so. So there's a lot of work to do, and unless we put mechanisms in place that it's going to enable society and the country to get on top of those with special mechanisms, then we're going to take years and years. It's going to take 10 years to try and get on top of all the corruption and the people involved throughout the state capture years. But on top of that, Imam, we are looking forward to hearing recommendations such as having civil society and independent oversight on the selection and election of board members of state-owned institutions. I think that's very important. There's too much political meddling there. And then when it comes to whistleblowers, a lot more protection and a lot more support in that regard, because if we don't protect our whistleblowers, if we don't make it easy for whistleblowers to participate in exposing corruption, we lose a big, effective way of getting a lot of information that helps us get on top of this problem in South Africa.
Well, what are your concerns, Wayne, about certain individuals taking the findings pertaining to them on judicial review? And, you know, that seems to be a growing number of individuals.
Well, that's fine. I think there is a process and they're allowed. You know, we've got to allow people to use the law to protect themselves if they want to. So that's fine. I think anybody who believes that they can test the law on the commission's outcomes, then let them do that. But again, you know, this is a judicial commission. It is one that is very important. These are recommendations. And the NPA and the investigative directorate can use this information. So I think what you're going to see is what we've been seeing for the last 10 years is how people implicated in state capture do a lot of filibustering, do a lot of Stalingrad tactics to stay out of the court process for as long as they can. And we've got to allow that to happen. And but the time will come. Let's let the process flow and let's see where it takes them.
And this, you know, this next question is, I suppose, in many ways sobering in a different way. What are your views on the fact that the president himself was found to have not done his duty in terms of acting on credible allegations of wrongdoing against the Guptas, or about his misrepresentations on the work of the high-level review panel on the SSA? This is an individual whose office and the individual himself, we have to trust to act when he is asked to act. How do you see him and his credibility then against that backdrop and what Zondo had to say about him?
Well, exactly. I think there's a lot of questions that the president himself has to answer. without a doubt. I mean, you know, the president was the deputy president through a lot of the time when state capture was happening, recent allegations as well. So I think the president has got a lot of questions to answer. But again, we need the formal processes to take place to run their course. And if he is found wanting and he needs to be held accountable, then that's what has to happen. What we do want to see, though, Imam, is that we've just had so much happening for so long and very little accountability. There's a lack of transparency, and we just need to see action taking place. We need to see people being held accountable now if we're going to raise the hope of this nation going forward, so that we can see people being put behind bars who have really played such a debilitating role in bringing this country to its knees. Far too little has happened. We know that the wheels of justice are turning, but they're turning very slowly. So from these recommendations, we want to see the president putting meaningful action in place so that we can see accountability flowing.
On any given week, Wayne, we can see OUTA and other organizations such as yourselves out in the public spaces having a discourse, about certain aspects, whether it pertains to state capture or accountability or what's needed to bring South Africa back into, into a higher state of stability and functionality. And I would love to share from that perspective your engagements with the public, because you are a public-facing organization, how important from your perspective this moment is and why it is important that the president be seen to be acting credibly and decisively and as a leader.
Well, it's very important because you don't have judicial commissions of this nature very often. And when they do happen, and this is probably one of the biggest ones that we've had in our new democracy, other than the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And from this, we've got to be able to see that the president and government is demonstrating that we're not going to allow this country to slip into this space again, that we're not going to allow the abuse of power to take place to the extent that it has happened. So there are a lot of guards and checks and balances that need to be put in place, independence. And as we said earlier on, when we see boards being appointed for state-owned entities, for instance, for example, how much political meddling took place, we need to make sure that there's a lot more oversight in that space as well. As we said, whistleblowers, and we need to capacitate the NPA and the ID. And we're hoping that the president gives a lot of input in that regard, because if we don't take this opportunity, if we don't seize the moment from this report and put in place meaningful actions that are going to stabilize this country and strengthen it from protecting citizens from this abuse of power in the future, then we might find ourselves back in this space again, and that would be devastating. We really need to move forward, and we need to protect the criminal justice system, and we need to capacitate it as well as whistleblowers. And I think the president has an opportunity here, and I hope he seizes it. He really needs to seize it. He cannot, be half pregnant on this space. We've really got to move forward as fast and as far as we can on the recommendations.
Wayne Duvenage, thank you for your time. Wayne Duvenage is the CEO of OUTA.